Have you read the Screwtape Letters yet? If not, what are you waiting for? Talk about a book filled with profound wisdom. It's a bunch of letters that C.S. Lewis wrote. Well, he says he found them, but there were letters from a senior devil to a junior devil, and the junior devil is trying to tempt a soul. He's got a patient who's a soul, and the letter I want to talk about today deals with war. And right now we're in the middle of a war. It's the first day of Lent, which is why I have ashes on my forehead. And there's a war going on in the world. There's a war in the Ukraine. And I want to pause before we dig into this chapter to pray for all of the people involved. All of the people involved. You see, a few years ago, I had the chance to visit Monte Cassino in Italy. There's a famous monastery there. St. Benedict and his sister, St. Scholastica, are buried there. And in the distance from one of the windows of the monastery, you can see a cemetery. It's a famous cemetery from World War II. And we had the chance to walk through that cemetery. It's people who were killed in a battle there. But on the other side of the ridge, there's a similar cemetery to the German soldiers who were killed in that very same battle. And the keepers of the cemetery told us that cemetery is as beautiful and as well kept as the cemetery for the Allied soldiers. And it caused me to pause. It caused me to pause and just have one of those moments. God, I think, constantly is giving us these breakthrough moments. And it's when he breaks through our busyness, our distractedness, our, focus on what's going on in our world. And he reaches us with one of these moments that's truth and its beauty and its goodness. And very often it's humbling. It was one of those moments. It floored me. I froze. I stood there when this guide to the cemetery said this, and I thought, no. Well, yes, of course, because on both sides of every war, there are human beings, there are brothers, there are sisters, there are fathers, there are mothers, there are husbands, there are wives, there are sons, there are daughters. On both sides of every war, there are children of God. On both sides of every war, there are souls. And that's why I ask that you and I pray about everyone involved in this war going on right now in the Ukraine. Because it's more than just life and death. It's souls. So what does C.S. Lewis in the Screwtape Letters have to say about war? Well, if you haven't read any of the book, just a quick reminder, it's a series of letters from a senior devil to a junior devil. And this letter apparently is in response to the junior devil's attempt to use war to help capture the soul of his patient, right? He's trying to corrupt the soul. He's trying to win the soul of his patient for the devil. And the senior devil writes this. He says, "You're delirious with joy because the European humans have started another of their wars," right? He's talking about World War II. This was written in that time period. And the senior devil says, "You're drunk. Clearly you are drunk. Clearly you are confused. Clearly you are misguided. Why? Why?" He goes on to say, war doesn't necessarily help us. What? Wait a second. War doesn't necessarily help the devils? The devil? What? I don't understand. Well, he says, next time you write, please give me a full account of the patient's reactions to the war, so that we consider whether you are likely to do more good by making him an extreme patriot or an ardent pacifist. There are all sorts of possibilities. But in the meantime, I must warn you not to hope too much from a war. Of course, war is entertaining. But he said, here's the problem for the devil with war. He said, all of a sudden people are going to their deaths in a place where they know they might die. And they tend to get prepared. Towards the end of the letter, he says, one of our best weapons is contented worldliness. But in war, that is rendered useless. In wartime, not even a human can believe that he is going to live forever. Thought-provoking, these few pages in chapter 5. Thought-provoking. So often, the way we see the world and the way God sees the world are 180. They're completely opposite. Why? I think it's simple. I think because God's time frame is eternal. And your time frame and my time frame tend to be a lot more focused on right now. What happened today? What is happening right now? And this devil, this senior devil, is essentially saying, in a sense, the same thing. You think this war is a good thing. You think this war sends people to hell. But really, I mean, honestly, you and I, when we stop and we reflect on our own lives, when things are tough, when we're in some kind of a battle, most of us have never been in a war. Most of us have not. But when we're in life and death situations, when we're struggling with, right, does that turn us away from God, or more often turn us back towards God? And that is just a little piece, I think, of what the senior devil is saying. One of our best weapons, contented worldliness, is rendered useless. Because in wartime, not even a human being can believe that he's going to live forever. You spend some time thinking about that. Spend some time thinking about that. One of the biggest challenges people have with faith throughout history has been this idea of pain and suffering. How can God be, all powerful, all knowing, and all loving, right? How can he be all those three things, yet allow pain and suffering, yet allow evil to exist in the world? And maybe the answer is so simple, so simple. St. Thomas Aquinas put it this way. He said he wouldn't allow all those things unless he would bring a greater good out of them. He wouldn't allow all those things unless he was going to or planned to or did bring a greater good out of them. When we see pain and suffering, whether it's right in front of us or whether it's halfway around the world, how often is God using that to bring a greater good, to transform hearts, minds, to transform souls? Maybe C.S. Lewis's senior devil is right. Maybe war, as horrible as it is, maybe God allows it to gain access to our hearts and our souls.